Good afternoon, everyone. We have not changed the ringing of the bell with some automated artificial intelligence bong dong thing that whatever Linus just did. That's not going to happen again. I think that was a mistake. Good afternoon. Welcome to the November 10th meeting of the Rotary Club of Brentwood. My name is Drew Rogers, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of our club this year. I would like to call the meeting to order. We have a great program today to honor our veterans, as we all should do this weekend, with Veterans Day being tomorrow. I'm going to ask Patrick Wright to join me at the podium to lead us in an invocation. Larry Kane will lead us in the pledge and four-way test, and Laura Troop will be introducing our guests and visiting Rotarians on behalf of Club Secretary Jennifer Bourne. With that, Patrick.
Would you join me in prayer, please? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many gifts and blessings we enjoy, our lives, our livelihoods, our friends, our families, and our freedoms. We praise you for your steadfastness and faithfulness, and for the beauty of your creation, your grace, and your mercy towards us. We pray for the crises in Israel and other parts of the Middle East and in Ukraine and Russia. In these places and others near and far, where there is darkness, may your light shine brightly through the hearts of your people. We lift up these members of our Rotary family and ask that you be particularly near to them now. Brian Goss, Larry Kane, Larry Faust, James Davis, Susie Lindsay, and Jared Tanksley. We especially bring our veterans to you today in prayer, those men and women who have faithfully served in the armed forces of the United States and have kept the flame of freedom alive and have kindled or rekindled that flame in other countries. We ask of you an increased blessing on their behalf on this Veterans Day. They have served well and given much. Pour out your spirit of comfort on our troops and their families and heal the bodies, hearts, minds, and spirits of those who are hurting. And we ask you to be with us in our efforts to do your work here as we endeavor to serve our community, state, nation, and world in seeking to make places better for our having been united in service. Help us to live now as people who long for peace, who pray for peace, and who seek to be peacemakers in this world. Bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies and our bodies for your service. Amen.
As you join me in the pledge, keep in mind that this pledge we have because of what our veterans have done for us on this special day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, second, three, and fourth. Fifth, Jim Villers.
Patrick, thank you for that beautiful prayer and invocation. Larry, thank you for the pledge and four-way test. Laura Troop, I do believe we do have, I know we've got a visiting Rotarian. We have some guests that you would like to introduce to us.
Yes, we do. We have three guests who are in the pipeline for membership. Banks Hickman over here.
Thanks.
Okay. Tim Elder right here.
Tim.
And Steve Tate right behind me.
Wonderful.
And a visiting Rotarian from the Morning Club, Bridget Gorkovsky. I'm close. Yeah. Bridget has such a lengthy history with Rotary, and I really hope that you all get a chance to meet her and get to know her. She has a very interesting background and has benefited from all the Rotarian connections that she's had over the years, and it's been an honor to get to know her this morning.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. What's that? Yeah, please do.
Also have an announcement, a couple of announcements. We are in the process of finalizing dates for the TBCH Christmas event that we do every year. So there will be 2 events and some work in between. Tentatively, we will be at one of the cottages. Technically it's the girls' cottage, but right now it's the elementary/girls' cottage. And then the Morning Club will cover the boys' cottage. So we are They're expecting another girl to be moving in over the next couple of days. Siri didn't understand. I know technology is awful. But we're going to have Thursday evening next week, wish night, where we'll get to meet the kids, feed them dinner, and get to know what their wishes are for Christmas. Then we'll shop over the next few days. And middle of December, we will celebrate with them and let them open presents and just enjoy time together. So we will be reaching out specifically with how to sign up to shop for kids. But if you're interested in participating in wish night next Thursday, tentatively, until they confirm with us, then let me know. The other one, big announcement. I'm very excited about this. We have opened a Rotary on-demand store. Okay, so lots of apparel, t-shirts, sweatshirts, vests, jackets. So we want you to take advantage. It's specific to our club, and they've got some Rotarian at Work shirts and Service Above Self shirts. But these are on-demand products, so you can get them whenever you want. You do not have to wait for an order to be placed with a whole bunch of things. It's flat rate shipping, and it'll come straight to your door. But the benefit is that every item sold is coming back to our club specifically for Polio Plus, which is awesome. We're so excited that all the proceeds are going to benefit directly Polio Plus. So screenshot this or tiny URL Rotary on Demand. tinyurl.com/Rotary on Demand, all lowercase, and we'll email it out in next week's reflections. Thanks. Oh, a question. That's perfect. It's going on the website tonight.
Jack is adding it to the website. That's Jared just volunteered you. That's how you get the Bob Billington Award, is if you just volunteer others to do things. Congratulations. No, thank you, Jack, and Laura. Thank you for the work that you've done in getting that online store stood up. Laura's worked very hard on it. I know the design of the merchandise that's in it. It was something that was very important to Laura. I think when you get in there, you'll see some things that look really good. I hope that you'll participate in it. The link will be coming in reflections. And so you'll be able to get it that way. It will also be linked on the website. So Laura, thank you. I will now, before we get to Happy Bucks, I wanted to invite Stephen Hammers to come to the podium for our Foundation Drive report out. Stephen.
Last week, we raised $41,500, which is a significant week for us. So this week, let's beat that. All right, are we ready? We ready back there? All right, table number 1. Chuck, how much we got this week? 0. Nothing above 0. Okay. All right, table number 2. $400, table number 2. Table number 3. 400. 400, table number 3. And table number 4. 1,200. Great. 1,200, table number 4. Table number 5. 1,000. Too many zeros there. 1,000. Table number 5. Table number 6. Nobody at table number 6. Okay. 0. Table number 6. 7. Table number 7. 800. Table number 7. All right. 8. 600. Table number 8. Okay. Table number 9. $250. Table number 9. $250. Table 10. 1,300. The winner today so far. 1,300. All right. Table number 11. You maxed out. You're not going to do it again? All right, table number 11 is 0. What we got, Bart? $52,830. All right, well on our way. Good job, guys.
Norris, it's good to see you reclaim your rightful place as club scribe for the foundation drive. It's good to see you there. I know it's just didn't feel right. Before we get into Happy Bucks, Ray Little is going to lead us in Happy Bucks, but I did want to mention that there's a couple of that their Happy Bucks will be for something specific from now until December 1st. So for the next 3 meetings, this one next will be off for Thanksgiving and then December 1st. And I've got it noted here, Waverly Pork Butts. Thanks to Bill Foley of the Franklin Noon Club and in partnership with the Columbia Noon Rotary, a challenge has been laid at our feet by Jeff Brasher, who, as you know from last week's meeting, is assistant governor coordinator now, and he was previous assistant district governor, for each of the Williamson County clubs to fund $350 that would then go to the Franklin Noon Club buying 100 pork shoulders that will be smoked and pulled. And in addition to frozen turkeys, those will be distributed to those that come to the Waverly Food Drive for Christmas. And that will all happen at the December 2nd food drive, which is the last of the year. The purchased supplies that our money will go to will provide 500 pounds of pulled pork, which will allow each family to receive 2 pounds of pork in addition to a frozen turkey. So it's going to a good cause. So if I know I didn't get this notification out prior to now, that's why you're gonna have 2 more opportunities to contribute to it. So with that, Ray Little, please lead us in Happy Bucks.
All right, I hope everybody's happy, and we're going to start with Larry.
I just want to take a few minutes and if I can do this and thank y'all for what you've done for Sue. And this is really ironic based on what he just announced. So I thought about it. So first of all, I've got $100 donation for Happy Bucks. That's for all the text, calls, and visits that you guys gave us over the last 6 months. It was awesome. Thank you so much. I've got another $100. This is for all the cards that I've received since the last 6 months, and especially over the last 6 weeks to me, and I appreciate it. When you get the cards like I get, it really means something. I read them all, and some of them bring tears, and some of them don't. But it's wonderful, and thank you all so much. Lastly, another $100. That's $300. That helps, doesn't it? $300. That's for the meals that y'all fixed for us over the last 6 months. We've got some great cooks in this club, guys. I'm telling you, and some of you gave more than once, and I appreciate that. Sue loved the food. I love the food. It was timely, and we needed it. And thank you all so very much. So before I sit down, I want you to remember one thing, or actually remember several things. But Sue loved this club, and 2022 she was a server at the pancake breakfast, where she was every year doing something the whole time. She liked that event. 2022, she got our neighbor Carla, to come with her because we were short people that day. So she was working for the club, bringing people into work. Then, of course, you have to remember that some of those days where we go out and lead and clean the Harpeth River, it gets kind of cold. So this was several years ago. It was very cold that day. Sue loved that project. She loved marching all around. This year was particularly good for her because we had Page High School students with us. By the end of the day, she knew all their names. They all hugged her when we got through and left. And I know they went back to school and talked about how great this girl was that led them around. I was just out there. And then lastly, you can't forget Sue looking for Michael as a clown. She did that for several years, loved it, loved getting dressed up. What she liked about it was she got to meet all the guests coming in outside, and she got to see all the kids. So that's what turned her on. She loved this club, and she loved it because of the members. She did. She loved the members. So thank y'all very much. I made it.
Thank you, Larry. Who's next?
$5 just in memory of my mom. I'm always feel nostalgic for her this time of year. She would have been 83 this next week. She was a great Rotarian. She was a Paul Harris Fellow many times over. She was the president of the club that she belonged to and was an elected politician and eventually worked for the governor of the state of Kentucky many years ago in its cabinet. And so I always feel nostalgic. I miss her. She actually passed away right after I joined this club, but we were quarantined with Rotary and I just joined, so nobody knew me. So I just want to, she was a great lady and I hope that I can just make part of a mark like she did in this world.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I'm just doing 20 because I never have happy bucks and I finally do. So there it is.
Thank you. Run silent, run deep.
For those of you who don't know, tomorrow is Veterans Day, but today is a more important day in my life. November 10th, 1776, something called the U.S. Marine Corps was founded in a place called Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Semper Fi, hoorah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Got some great news this week. My neurologist said my brain has returned to normal. So,
Oh, that's done.
the next day, the vascular surgeon said that all the blood clots that caused this problem have cleared up, and I may not be on blood thinners ever.
That's fabulous.
So I've got a few things that I'm happy about. First off, big thank you to Matt Hall, James Covington, for allowing us to work properly for the past 2 weeks. But secondly, this past week I had to go home. A dear friend of mine passed away, and while I'm sitting at the funeral, I'm mad at God. I'm questioning why someone so young would go out like that. And one thing his father said that I'll never forget was that he lived on earth the exact amount of time that God wanted him to. And that really put me at peace with him because it was really hard at first. That helped out a lot. So I'm very thankful that that was able to do.
I had coffee with Banks yesterday, and I encourage you to have coffee with him. He is one of the most interesting guys ever. And he is a huge Georgia Bulldog. And I just wanted to say, you're going down tomorrow.
I'm going to put 10 in for my brother who passed a couple weeks ago. He was 10 years older than I am, and he was also a veteran. So I want to recognize him and his service today and thank all of you who reached out with text and emails and cards. Very much appreciated by the family. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple dollars here today. The first, we haven't had Happy Bucks since my daughter was born. So even though I'm not sleeping, I'm still very happy. And then the second, the Brentwood Bruins football team, still undefeated. It's an amazing thing. It's something I couldn't do when I was there, but hey, they're going to go all the way this year. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins.
I've got 5 here. This is a down payment on all the Happy Bucks at Allen owes.
I'm happy for my 2 boys. I have a freshman at Overton. He made the basketball team, and this week he was asked to start practicing with varsity. So that was pretty awesome. And then my 6th graders at Meggs, he was one of 2 6th graders that made the basketball team there. So must have had good coaching growing up, I guess.
Very nice.
Thank you.
we didn't have it last week, but that is the Happy Bucks because for the first time in franchise history, I can say the phrase World Series champions, Texas Rangers.
1961. Since 1961, they've been in existence longer than this club.
Anybody else? I'm going to say a little something about Sue Kane as well. She was always an encourager. She was a great servant. She epitomized service above self. She went to high school with a lot of my family and didn't hold it against me. So but I have great memories at the chamber galas and all. Larry and Sue and Marie and I dancing the whole time with the bands and Pancake Day, and she helped campaign in so many ways. As you serve and encourage others, just think of Sue. Well, Alan, you're covered now through 2024. So bring $1 the first meeting in 25.
Don't encourage him. Because he will. Ray, thank you. Hang on one second. We'll have to post security over there. That's a lot of money. Yeah, I would just say for those of you that weren't able to attend Sue's funeral, there was a card that was distributed out that while Sue's hugs may have been $1 million, her smile was $1 billion. It was worth more. And I actually have kept that, in a space that I do see it every day. And it is impossible to not start your day well when you see someone that lights up a room like that. Thank you for those comments, Larry, and thank you, Ray, for doing Happy Bucks. I'm now going to welcome Bert Bradford to the podium to introduce our speaker, our Veterans Day program speaker, Ross Becker. Bert.
Thank you, sir. Since it's Veterans Day tomorrow, we're celebrating that today with a guest speaker who is a Air Force veteran. He is Ross Becker. He spent 26 years in the Air Force flying fighter jets all over Vietnam. He retired as a full colonel, and during his experiences in Vietnam, he was awarded the Silver Star and Distinguished Flying Cross. Visiting with him for a few minutes before today, I asked him, so what scares you more, flying missions over Vietnam with bombs flying at you or speaking in front of people? And he said, this scares him more. So if you'll welcome Ross Becker.
Thanks, everybody, for inviting me. And, we'll get started just in case you. No. Close to my mouth. Just in case you all may think I didn't bother to shave today, this is the 10th day of No Shave November, which many of you may know is the male version of the pink ribbon breast cancer. No Shave November. Okay, I put together a 25, 30-minute pitch on how the hell this nation got Vietnam and how the hell a 20-year-old kid got Vietnam. Things that happened there. But I understand half you're going to walk out at 1 o'clock, so I think I'll try to cut things a little bit short. Okay, so the Vietnam tour, everybody had. I was there from July 1966 to July 1967. I guess I'm not holding this close. And when I put this title slide together, I saw that number on the screen. I thought, holy cow, that's almost 60 years ago. How scary is that? Time flies. Okay, the Vietnam War. What the hell was it all about? And by the way, where the hell is it now? Knowing that a lot of you people in this day and age have probably been to Vietnam, business there or as a tourist. Believe me, back in 1966, nobody knew where Vietnam was. At any rate, turns out Vietnam is by the South China Sea. You got Philippines on the map and China just to the north of it. And at the time, it was called French Indochina, but now it's called Southeast Asia. During World War II, Japan, small nation of Japan, conquered and occupied everything you can see on the map, which is quite extraordinary for a small island nation. After the war, the big thing in the 50s and the 60s that this country was worried about was something called the domino effect, where communism was spreading throughout the world. And in this part of the world, in Laos, you had something called the Pathet Laos. In Cambodia, you had the Khmer Rouge, which maybe many of you have seen the movie The Killing Fields, which documented the slaughter there. But we're here today to talk about Vietnam, where you had North Vietnam, led by a man named Ho Chi Minh, trying to take over South Vietnam, which was friendly to the Western nation. Eisenhower, during the Eisenhower years, it just kind of supported them with money. But starting with JFK, he started putting military members there in the way of special forces to help train the South Vietnamese. After his assassination, when the Vietnam War was quite popular, JFK, kind of maybe for political reasons or whatever, finally expanded the Vietnam War to where we had over 500,000 soldiers and airmen in the war. As a result of that, an incredible over 58,000 Americans were killed in the Vietnam War. And now in Washington, D.C., there's a Vietnam memorial called the Wall, where the names of every 58,000 plus men and women who died in Vietnam are written on that wall. And if any of you have been there or know a name on the wall, you know it's a pretty emotional experience on the wall. Okay, so this is October 1966, about my 23rd birthday at Bien Hoa Air Base in Vietnam. And so the question is, what the hell am I doing here and how did I get here? Let me go through this quickly. That's me as a young boy, Little League. I played third base. I played first base. And in the high school, I was a class officer. And then I went to St. Louis University, Parks College of St. Louis University, an aviation school. And before I go any further, most of you are saying, what the hell's with the White Sox? Well, funnily enough, about 10 years later, some famous guy copied my fashion. I joined a fraternity, of course, an aviation fraternity, and we're all there making our propeller blades, which actually were paddles used to pat our behinds during Hell Week. And that paddle I have in my hand struck my behind 1,219 times during Hell. We often got even with our brothers during Pledge Week. And in this case, we took a brother to the highest hotel in St. Louis, strapped him to the back of the elevator in his underwear, and hit every button so the elevator would go down, and got him out on the second floor. Only one guy got on the elevator with him, and they probably had a pretty interesting conversation. Also during that time, Vietnam War was cranking up. They started the draft, and ROTC was mandatory for the first 2 years of college. So I figured that the day after I graduated, the draft would probably draft me. And so I thought, I have a choice. I can either go over there and crawl through the jungle, or I can fly open jungle. I think I'll take the latter. Thank you very much. And at that time, we would always go over to St. Louis Airport, Lambert Field, and watch the Missouri Air Guard fly their F-100s. Now, the F-100 at that time was the airplane to fly. It was the fighter jet to fly. In fact, the Air Force Thunderbirds, the demonstration team, used the F-100 for about 10 years. But what I didn't know is that the F-100 is a relatively difficult airplane to fly. It had this condition called adverse yaw, where if you got the nose too high against the relative wind, the airplane would react opposite to the way you wanted it to. In other words, if you wanted to turn left, it would turn right. And sometimes that would have a rather disastrous effect. So where do I sign up to fly that? Okay, so off I went to pilot training at Cannon Air Force Base in Oklahoma, which was 6 months of flying in something called the T-37 jet. And the second 6 months was to fly the first supersonic trainer, T-38. Now, this is a picture from my class yearbook, pilot training class yearbook. And during the year, the Air Force would have fellow class members write an anonymous critique on it. And one of the guys that critiqued me called me cocky. Cocky, any rate, as you can see, I played third base on the softball team for the class. I graduated from first base in Little League. And our catcher was a guy named Arnie Lamp, who was really a character. He was joking around all the time. And as it says on the bottom of the screen, Arnie was our first baseman, certain on the softball team. No one else wanted to play that position. Unfortunately, Arnie's last position is to get his name on the wall. Another one of my classmates, a really good friend, was Jim Comiskey, married guy, 2 young, great kids, a Notre Dame guy, he's always talking about the Fighting Irish. Shot down and killed in an F-100. And there he is right there on the wall. And thirdly, there was an ex-Marine who somehow got himself into Air Force pilot training. And an RF-4 shot down on North Vietnam and captured by the North Vietnamese and spent 7 years and then as a POW in the Hammer. So back to this cocky guy, as you can see up on the top, I managed to get an F-100 assignment out of pilot training. Graduated. And off I was to Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico to fly the F-100. Now, whilst there, you not only learn to fly the airplane, but you learn how to use the airplane. You learn how to dive bomb, strafe cannons, and drop a thing called napalm, which I'll talk about a little bit more. And that delivery was to fly low to the ground at high speed and skip. Now, the minimum altitude during this maneuver was 50 feet. And this photograph was taken by my flight instructor, who was in the tower, which was 50 feet high. And as you can see, I'm below him. So he fouled me. He failed me on the mission. And he said, Becker, let me tell you something. There are old fighter pilots and there are bold fighter pilots, but there are no old fighter pilots. Okay, so there were 2 air wars in Vietnam. In the north of Vietnam, we flew interdiction missions, meaning we tried to interdict the ability of North Vietnamese to support a war in South Vietnam. Military installations, weapons factories, those bridges, and those kind of things. And that war was by the Air Force, was flown by the F-105 Thunder Chief, which was a really fast, great airplane, carried a lot of ordnance, but unfortunately, it was up against a lot of resistance. Russian MiG-25 jets, MiG-21 jets, Russian-made surface-to-air missiles, and 37 and 57 millimeter AAA guns. And at that time, we had a woman who was fairly famous, but a protester of the Vietnam War, who went to Hanoi and sat along with a AAA crew while they were firing their AAA gun. And so poor old Jane in this picture is blocking her ears so that she can't hear the guns that are firing at her fellow citizens and trying to shoot them down. Hanoi Jane. This painting is a good depiction of a typical F-105 mission where they drop bombs on this bridge, and they've got a lot of anti-aircraft, a lot of flak in the air and all that kind of stuff. So as the 2 airplanes are departing the area, number 2 airplane is quite high in the leader. Now back to that painting, the guy on the very left-hand side is named John Casper. He got a 105 out and he was sorry. I'm gonna have a hard time with that one. Okay, where are we here? Okay. Oh. Now, in the mission of the South, the mission in the South was to provide close air support for the Army and Marines. That means that if the Army or Marines were in contact with the enemy, it was our job to provide air power, drop a bomb, strafe, napalm, or whatever that help support them. And that airplane doing that was the main airplane. Now, the defenses we had to go up against weren't MiGs and weren't the surface air missiles, but there was a mobile anti-aircraft gun, about a 50 caliber version. That was our main thing we had to go up. So July 1966, I jumped on a big old Continental airplane, DC-8, and flew to Saigon. And when I got on the bus from Saigon Airport to go through Saigon to go to the base that I was assigned to, I looked at these people and I thought, gee, are these people regular guys during the day and maybe Viet Cong at night? I mean, it was just kind of a scary place to be. The other thing I thought was, for the first time in my life, am I going to have the guts to do this? What am I going to do when people start shooting at me? But I thought, no, I'm well trained, and I think I'm well capable, and I think I'm. So this was Benoit Air Base. This is going through the entry, where you see an F-100 on the ramp there, and this particular film ends with that's base operations with the 531st Fighter Squadron, and their call sign was Ramrod. And the reason it was Ramrod is because their squadron mascot was a 15-foot python. And I'll never forget being in the officers club one night, and they had Ramrod on the bar, and I put my hand up on its back as it was moving along, and I could not believe the strength of the muscle under that skin. That is one strong piece. Now my squadron was the 510th Fighter Squadron. Our call sign was the Buzzards. So the Buzzards Benoit. And as an F-100, we carried a lot of different munitions. One most often that we carried was napalm, because we were able to drop napalm fairly close to the Army if they were in contact without having to worry about shrapnel or those kind of things, killing friendly fire, as it's called. And you don't want to be on the receiving end of napalm. It's a gelatin that's ignited. It does kind of a nasty deed. There was also, that's a rocket pod on the outboard station. It was 19 2.75 rockets that fired. And there's me pre-flighting a can of napalm on the inboard station and rocket pod on the outboard station. Also, we carried hard bombs, which in this case they were called high drags, because when you release the bomb, it came out of the back of it. So it slowed it down, so you drop a lot closer into the target and get the hell out of here. And finally, we had 4 cannons that fired a 20 millimeter shell. Which is this it either had a armor piercing head on it or a high explosive head on, meaning this part of it exploded. Hopefully this is not. But anyway, we carried 200 of those things in each gun, so 800 total. And so I'll show you a little bit of this action here. That's an F-100 firing a rocket pod from the right board station. And another rocket pod. And now let me tell you that the procedure was that you should not make a straight burst more than 1 second, because it would tend to do damage to the cannons. But you can see that airplane on the left there is firing for about 3 hours. Obviously ticked off it. And also we had in our 2-seat airplanes, we had Army photographers come up and join us oftentimes. And so this is actually a film of me dropping a napalm can. And as you'll see the shadow as I from the ground getting so close, pretty low altitude, I dropped the napalm. And then of course flying home. Okay, I'm going to tell you a few stories about my F1 experiences at Benoit. First was T-Log. Now, when we went through training, and for example, training to do a diagram, you flew at 10,000 feet over a known point of the ground, so that when you rolled into the target, you knew exactly what the 30-degree diagram. And then the idea was to accelerate to the new airspeed at the really altitude, but the bomb right on the top. Then you make about 4 or 5 feet long. Well, in Vietnam, the people are shooting that, the people use the T-Rod, meaning that looks about right. The other thing, and this is the craziest thing I've ever done in 40-some years of flying airplane. Back to that picture there, that thing in front of the airplane is called a pitot boom, and what that does is measures the airspeed that the airplane is flying. Now, for those who, the single thing about an airplane is what speed is the air flying over the wings in order to generate lift. So it's the one thing that you have to have. You have to do what your airspeed is. Well, one day we were diverted from Benoit to a new Air Force base on the West Coast, the East Coast, because of a rain story where we were. And this facility was still all tents and things like that, and couldn't wait to get the hell out. Well, we were reassigned a new target the next morning, loaded up with bombs. And when I went out to the airplane, I saw that, as usual, the pitot boom was propped up like this because that's the way that's normal. You want trucks running into it or anything. But normally they would put a waterproof cap on the top of it, so there wouldn't be any water coming down into the pitot boom, which would make it inoperable. Well, sure enough, there was a rag on top of my pitot boom, and I thought, there's a pretty good chance the damn airspeed indicator is not going to work. But I'd also been flying up there long enough to know how much runway I needed with the bomb load, in this case about 7,500 feet. And I was taking off on a 10,000. Sure enough, I get rolled down the runway, and on the left of the street is the air. So I said, the hell with it. I just went down at the end of the runway, 10,000 feet later, put the airplane off. Sure enough, before I moved in, believe me, that was a pretty crazy thing. Now, one other thing here, this is a letter home, which, as you can see on the top right corner, the post is right for you. And the other couple things I want to tell you about this. Up on the top, it says 76 missions. Back then, every day was exactly the same. There was no difference between a Monday or a Thursday, so you had no idea what day it was, what date it was, or whatever. So I always dated my mail, my letters back home with my missions. In this case, 76 missions. But the other really important thing is look who it's to, dear mom and dad. And what I mean by that wasn't dear honey, dear darling. In other words, I wasn't writing a wife asking about the kids and all that kind of. I was just a carefree bachelor who didn't have a care in the world. And I think that made things so much easier. In this case, I'm telling my parents about a guy who bunked right next to me, who was shot down and killed. And my job was to be something called a summary courts officer, which means I had to go through all of his belongings to make sure that what we sent back to the States wasn't something maybe his wife didn't want to receive. But at any rate, in one of the letters, his son said, "Daddy, please don't get killed." So that was pretty emotional. And this is a funny story. I know there's some of you who are young from the hospital. But for some of those that have, no matter how well trimmed your mustache is, as you know, you inevitably get one hair just kind of sticking on your lip. And you're doing it. Well, I go off on a mission. I'm about halfway to the target. He had hair off my lip. So I took my glove off. And I undid my mask over the bayonet the next night. Try to get it. And I looked down on my microphone. And there's so it wasn't an error that my lip, because I got to keep this thing.
So of course I panicked away. And he got down on the floor and he scooted under the rudder pedal before I could stomp on him. And I used to joke after that. I said, you know, if he stayed in the nose of that airplane for about another 10 combat missions, he might get some kind of an award. Okay, also, in the Army would say we're a bunch of sissies, but the Air Force would give every pilot or whatever an R&R trip, 1 week trip to like Hong Kong or Hong Kong or Bangkok for a week long rest and recuperation. Well, I'm here to tell you that for us bachelors anyway, it was not a week of R&R. It was a week of I&I, intoxication and intercourse. And then we would come back to our jobs in Vietnam and have a week of R&R after our week of I&I. And then finally and unfortunately, after that, we were back to M&M, monotony and masturbation. Now, another really important thing happened that wasn't monotonous at all is I had a reassignment. I was now assigned with the Army via forward air control, which I'll explain to you in a minute. But I was assigned to the 3rd Brigade of the 1st Infantry Division, and it wasn't until 25 or 30 years later I was celebrating an anniversary with my wife at Omaha Beach in France. And as a result of that, I realized it was the 1st Infantry Division that did the Omaha Beach. And there they have a huge monument to all the men who died. But now my job was to be a forward air controller, which means I was the guy that was going to direct the fighters onto the targets of the enemy shooting at the Army at a low altitude and at a low speed. So not certainly as much fun as flying a fighter. And in order to do that, I had what were called Willie Pete rockets. In other words, I had 4 rockets that I could fire down to a target area that would bring up so that the fighter gets to the top on their side. You can see where I go in the bomb. Now, the facilities of this Army camp were a hell of a lot worse. This nice Air Force base I'd left. Our sleeping accommodations were not very nice, and nor was our entertainment. We didn't have much entertainment there. Now, the guy with this around my shoulder, his name was Pete Davis, probably the greatest character I've ever known. He was my closest friend. We'd gone through everything together: pilot training, F-100 training, our time in Vietnam, and now we're in the same brigade. And this was our recruiting facilities. This case, it's a gentleman 2-holder, meaning it's an officer in the train. There's only 2 holders. There's 3 things I want to remind me of looking at this. One is there was a saying then that probably is true today. The 3 worst things in life are warm beer, wet toilet paper, and wise exes. And believe me, there was a hell of a lot of abundance of all that. The other thing that I'm reminded looking at this is, as you can imagine, graffiti was everywhere in Vietnam. And one of the most popular graffitis was someone would write 130 days of wait. What that meant was during their year, they had 130 days to go, and they'd wake up on the Freedom Bird and get back home. You know, if you ask somebody, "Hey Joe, how you doing?" He'd say, 27 days to wake up. So that was kind of the common thing. I'm reminded now of sitting in a train once, and the graffiti on the wall was 364 days to wake up. Seems like I just got here yesterday. The other thing is the bottom of that hole is, and what the job of the local ladies in the local village every day is they come out to the camp, pulled the barrels out from under the and put kerosene in there and burned what was in there. Now, we used to joke about hoping that they never unionize
like the amalgamated ship burners of Vietnam or something like that. Because they'd probably be carrying signs saying, we've had enough of this shit, or this job stinks. Now, one more story that one day I had the Pacific Stars and Stripes, and our job was to fly formation next to the airport. It was my buddy Pete Davis flying. And once he saw that I was on his wing, I saw him his flights. And we just exactly what he did. Turned on, pulled his pants down, put out and mooned us. So we were concerned that the local news was going to be Air Force shits on the Viet Cong. All right, now this is my final bit here. One day when I think I had about maybe 32 days to wake up, I got assigned to be the first forward air controller for an Army operation. It's called the helicopter assault, where they Huey helicopters, they fly in a bunch of Army people into a target area that they think they're going to get some resistance. Well, sure enough, they didn't know this until they got there. It turns out where they landed, there was about two North Vietnamese, two regiments of North Vietnamese. So obviously all hell completely broke loose. Another problem was the weather was really terrible, so I had to be flying a lot lower than I was on. And there I am firing the white smoke wire so they F-100s, whatever, see where to drop the bombs. And the other thing that was happening is we were getting a lot of ground fire. Now I want you to look at the middle of the screen here, and that's about a 50 caliber round coming straight at you pretty fast. Now, on that day, they weren't using tracer bullets because you can see where they're coming from. But I could feel the shock wave. I knew it was rather hot situation. So I mean, we had a bunch of napalm going down, and really in close quarters to the Army there, and in the end, the Army credited us with 931 KBA. That means killed by air, and probably saved maybe a couple hundred at least Army soldiers. So eventually I came back to my base at Vic, landed the airplane. Obviously, as you can imagine, relieved as hell to be doing this at this point. And I taxied on in. Quickly taxi on in. Get to my gate. And when I stopped the prop, turn up, stop the airplane. My crew chief said, "Holy shit, Lieutenant, look at this." And this was the end of my prop. Now that's probably about a 50 caliber round. And had it knocked off the tip of that prop, that the engine would have been so imbalanced it would have tore itself up in about 2 turns. And I'd have been floating down. I was awarded the Silver Star that mission, and I'll put these things up on the table. But the Silver Star, you can see, is the third highest award for valor in America. And now, final slide. It's so perfect. I didn't know this till my son told me, but the state of Tennessee, and by the way, I've gone around, I can't find another state that does this. The state of Tennessee awards to veterans who have awards for valor a free license plate that you can see in the top right corner is permanent. And it never has to be renewed. And in this case, I got it for my Silver Star. And so one day, about going down Moore's Lane, I'm going to Publix or Home Depot or whatever. And as I'm going past Cool Springs, I noticed I have a bracket top right behind me. So I, my test, exactly the right speed. And as we walk over the overpass, and there's 65. I look over, everybody goes.
Ross, before you,
I'll put these things over here if you want to take a look at them.
thank you very much for being here this afternoon, for your story and for bringing those things. That's amazing. I do have a gift that I'd like to offer you. We have a pen that we'd like to give you. It's a Rotary Club of Brentwood pen. And it's so that you can remember your time with us today. We are grateful that you chose to spend it with us and to share the stories that you did with us. We would ask you to do a favor of us, though, with that pen, as we have a book that we read to first grade students here in Brentwood. And we would ask that you take the pen and you sign the book. And when we read to them, we will share stories about what you share with us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Banks, Steve, Tim, welcome back from Japan, Tim. I don't know, Tim may have had to leave. Bridget, thank you for being here. It's great to be with you all. If you can, stick around and stack chairs in stacks of 8. We would appreciate that. And if you can help put tables away as well. George, you're riding home with me. I got you. If there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, then we're adjourned.